Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troublemaking and irresponsible, one-sided news stories
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Everybody keeps talking about danger to democracy. Oh, if this and that, it's all a danger to democracy. But I'm here to say that democracy sucks. Democracy is a fundamentally evil form of government. It was democracy that killed Socrates. Plato said that tyranny naturally arises out of democracy, and it's true. Democracy is a rich man's trick to make ordinary folks feel like they've got some kind of control over society, when in fact they're nothing but a bunch of fucking slaves. Oligarchs and corporations love democracy. Again, half the population in the United States has an IQ below 90. Think about that. 85 to 70 is considered to be mentally handicapped. People like that aren't really capable of doing much of anything other than repetitive tasks and manual labor, brute manual labor. And 70 and below is retarded. So you've got half the country that's either mentally handicapped or outright retarded. These people will never be able to make an intelligent decision about anything, ever. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. You know, the measure of a man is how honest he is, whether he has principles and honor. That's what makes a good man, whether he tells the truth and pays his bills. That measures a good man. People who are stupid aren't bad people, but they're not capable of being able to formulate any type of intelligent conclusion to any problem. They're motivated entirely by emotion and the simple satisfaction of immediate desires, and will vote for anyone who promises them that. Okay? You know it's true. And, you know, I don't think it really applies to you if you're watching this video, because if you're watching this video, you're not going stupid people wouldn't want to watch this video. So anyway, let's continue. Letting those people vote is like giving a little child a loaded pistol to play with. That's just what it boils down to. Here, a study by Gillens and Page found that economic elites have a disproportionate influence in Washington. Oh, gee, you don't say? which implies that the preferences of the rich have a much bigger impact on policy decisions than the views of middle-income and poor Americans. This suggests that oligarchs prefer democratic systems that they can manipulate to serve their interests. And just look at the history of it. Look at Athens. My God. Cleon the Tanner. Alcibiades. Look at the shit that they manipulated Athens into doing. And over and over and over and over again, they brought Athens to ruin. Conceived as the foundation of liberty, modern democracy paves the way for tyranny. Born for the purpose of standing as a bulwark against power, it ends by providing power with the finest soil it has ever had in which to spread itself over the social field. And here's a quote from Frank Herbert's Dune. If you want to get an insight into how people with power operate and think, you ought to read that. Dune is a science fiction story. Yes, that's true, but more than anything, it's a treatise on politics. But anyway, all governments suffer a recurrent problem. Power attracts pathological personalities. It is not that power corrupts, but that it is a magnet to the corruptible. Noam Chomsky said, "The government has a defect. It's potentially democratic. Corporations have no defect. They're pure tyrannies." If you want to gain an insight into the machinations of governments like ours, you ought to read Niccolo Machiavelli's Discourses on Livy. That's his best book. That was his first book. Everybody keeps talking about the prince, the prince. Machiavelli's Discourses on Livy is the best. I have read a few hundred pages of it. It's kind of dry. I spark noted the rest. But let's see what he had to say. You know better than I that in a republic, talent is always suspect. A man attains an elevated position only when his mediocrity prevents him from being a threat to others. And for this reason, a democracy is never governed by the most competent, but rather by those whose insignificance will not jeopardize anyone else's self-esteem. Presidents and prime ministers come into their position not owing to their status as natural aristocrats, as feudal kings once did, but as a result of their capacity as morally uninhibited demagogues. And think about it. Huey Long, Hitler, Mussolini. Think about it. Look at the history. Hence, democracy virtually assures that only dangerous men will rise to the top of government. Democracy must be questioned if it subverts the rule of law, free information, and commerce along with property rights. And isn't that the state of our country now? Of this country now? Isn't it? Oh, and by the way, property rights are the foundation of a free society, not freedom of speech. That's a trick. You can scream and yell and say anything you want, but if you don't have control of your property, you're still a slave. Analogize it to that of a parent-child relationship. A child can scream, a child can yell, a child can say anything he or she wants, but the parent has control of the shelter, the food, and the clothing. Property rights, John Locke 101. Property rights are the foundation of a free society. If democracy can't protect us from totalitarianism and bad rulers, then something must be done. But what? The only way that I see is to limit the number of people who can vote and decentralize power down to the lowest level to foster more social accountability. If the guy making the decisions is somebody you know and you can look right at and come talk to, he's going to be less likely to fuck you over, isn't he? Our Constitution originally limited voting rights to adult men owning property. Senators were chosen by states, not by vote. Presidents were chosen by an electoral college. The only office that the average guy, the average citizen could vote for was Congress. That's it. Today, and today I think they should do something similar. Certainly, you couldn't limit it to men, but today I think it should be limited with the performance of some kind of public service and maybe an age restriction of say 28 years old. You should either have to own property, perform public service, and be 28 years old, because that's when your brain matures, at 28. So, people who have been in the military, I guess, doctors, lawyers, teachers, nurses, firemen, people who perform a public service or own property and be at least 28 years old. Now, that's what I think. However, regardless of what I think, there has to be some way to limit the people who can vote, especially punk kids who are 18 years old. Let's talk about Machiavelli again, because he made a couple of piquant observations. He credited the longevity of the Roman Republic to an armed populace. People in Rome, they didn't get to vote, but they were armed. The senators never fucked them over too much because they knew that the ordinary folks could take their swords and shove it up their asses. The Roman Republic lasted 500 years. Think about that. He also said that from time to time, every republic has to have a reset, a reboot. It needs to go back to the beginning and start over again. Its skeleton, its form. And he said that it always has to be, if it's going to happen, it has to happen with a single man who comes forward, takes the reins, and resets the republic. But then, once he's finished, he goes back to his farm and he relinquishes power and lets it start running again the way it was supposed to. Think Quintus Cincinnatus in the history of the Roman Republic. He did that. He took the power of a king. He reset the republic, and then when it was done, he went back to his farm and just said, fuck it. George Washington did that. He just went back to his farm and he let things run the way they were supposed to. And on the topic of the Founding Fathers, let's look to see what they said about democracy. When the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic. Benjamin Franklin said that. Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There was never a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. John Quincy Adams, the experience of all former ages had shown that all of human governments, democracy was the most unstable, fluctuated, and short-lived. Thomas Jefferson, a democracy is nothing more than a mob rule where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. George Washington didn't like democracy either. Hell, none of them did. That's the reason they structured this country. That's the reason they structured this country the way they did, to prevent democracy. And yet it has eroded. What we need is a reboot. We need a reboot or it's death. I don't see any other two possibilities. But one thing's for sure, folks. If they come to get your guns, that's when it's time to start voting with bullets. There is no substitute for an armed populace.
Vice, just give us a pop quiz.
I don't know anything.
Do you know the name of the vice president?
No, actually. I just moved here from Wisconsin, so I know that.
And they don't report on the vice president in Wisconsin?
They do, but I don't know.
I don't know. I have no idea.
You don't know?
No.
Isn't the vice president a female?
Yes. Give me a name, though.
Just ask. Yeah, I don't know her name at all.
powerful person in the world?
Camilla, I forgot her last name.
Forgot her last name.
Yeah, I don't. I'm really pissed off at politics.
Who's Joe Biden's vice president?
Who is Joe Biden's vice president? Kamala.
The second most powerful person in the world.
Kamala.
If he falls down the stairs, oh yeah,
It's Kamala Harris. Yes, Kamala Harris.
I'm vice president. My name is Kamala Harris.
vice presidents often get overlooked in terms of American politics, and they don't get the respect that they maybe deserve. Who was Barack Obama's vice president?
I have no idea.
No. Come on, man. Who was Barack Obama's vice president?